that she understands, evaluates herself and her life, her whole existence, is against the measure of achievement that her parents present for her.
Sobre o que falar do ex-namorado Daniel Cravinhos e como se comportar diante da câmera.
You'd think a child born into a rich family would be grateful for the start they get in life. They have all the financial support they need to build a successful academic career, and if everything fails, they have a safety net to fall back on. But some rich kids grow so entitled that their families become nothing more than hurdles to them. Hurdles on the way to inheriting their wealth and doing as they please, without someone breathing down their necks. These are the stories of 3 narcissistic, psychopathic teens who took out their entire families for outrageous reasons.
Sobre o que falar do ex-namorado Daniel Cravinhos e como se comportar diante da câmera.
Suzanne Louise Von Richthofen would become one of the most fake, infuriating criminals in Brazil's history. But before all that, she was a promising young teenager in Sao Paulo, living with her rich, intellectual family. In the early 2000s, the Von Richthofen family lived in a luxurious mansion with a library, a swimming pool, and rooms dedicated to entertainment for their 2 children. Manfred Albert von Richthofen was a successful engineer and the director of the Sao Paulo company, managing all the highways and roads leading out of the city. He had moved to Brazil from Germany as a student. And it was at university that Manfred met his future wife, Mauricia. Mauricia went on to become a just as successful psychiatrist. Everyone who knew her said the same thing about her. She was kind, brave, and very fun to be around once you got close to her. On November 3rd, 1983, several years after they got married, Mauricia and Manfred had their first child, Suzane. 4 years later came a boy named Andreas. Both kids went on to attend private schools. They had bright careers ahead, everyone was certain. Their family offered not just the financial support, but the care and attention that any child needs to become successful later in life. And by all accounts, Suzanne and Andreas did flourish under their parents' care. They were straight-A students with lots of hobbies and excellent behavior at school. Suzanne in particular was described as quite shy and soft-spoken. She wasn't the most popular girl in school, but she was in no way the rebel or the kind to start fights behind the school. By the time she graduated from high school, she was fluent in 3 languages and ready to study for a prestigious, high-earning career. Manfred and Mauricia were proud of her. After all, they wanted their children to pursue high-paying jobs and make their own money too, even if they each had some $30 million in the bank. Indeed, the Von Richthofens had a huge net worth, and reportedly, Manfred had another $10 million embezzled in a Swiss bank account. Also reportedly, this would have been Suzanne's after she finished her bachelor's studies. The account was in her name. All she had to do was focus on her studies and be patient. But Suzanne wasn't going to take that easy route. In fact, things were about to take a very dark turn. As it goes in stories like these, those that sound too good to be true, Suzanne met a man that her family didn't want around her. It all started when her little brother, Andreas, developed a passion for model airplanes. At an airplane fair in 1999, the family met a 19-year-old boy named Daniel. He was 3 years older than Suzanne and a passionate model airplane builder, just like her brother. Andreas saw Daniel as a role model, and he begged his parents to invite Daniel to their home to teach him how to build more airplane models. Soon enough, Daniel had a different motive for visiting the Von Richthofens' house, Suzanne and her money. You see, Daniel had grown up together with his brother, Christian, in a seriously low-income household. They had both dropped out of high school and they were working as mechanics. Well, that was on paper. Most of the time, they smoked and got in trouble. When she started dating Daniel, Suzanne knew her family wouldn't love their love story, so she kept it a secret for as long as she could. When her parents found out eventually, they didn't seem fazed. They said it was okay. Daniel was an ambitious law student and a passionate model airplane builder after all. While Daniel did build a few model airplanes, he was never a college student. He had charmed his way into the Richthofens' lives with lies and outrageous compliments. The minute he started dating Suzanne, he stopped going to work. He figured he was going to live off Suzanne's money forever. Shockingly, Suzanne did not see a problem in this. Some months into this charade, Manfred and Mauricia learned that Daniel was a compulsive liar. Understanding what he really did all day, they asked their daughter not to date him anymore. This is how many tragic familicide cases start, with a teenager being denied a partner. Teenage romances can be intense, and it can be a symbol of the teen trying to affirm their independence. Take that away from them, and you can get disproportionate reactions. Still, no one could have prepared Manfred and Marisia for what their daughter chose to do. First, Suzanne manipulated her little brother into covering for them. She would sneak out to motels and getaways with Daniel, all while Andreas concocted crazy stories for their parents. Then, in 2002, Manfred and Marisia left their kids home alone while they went on a holiday to Europe. They hadn't been away on their own in years, and they figured Suzanne was old enough and responsible enough to be in charge of the house and take care of her younger brother. Except, it was the other way around. Andreas ended up keeping the house together while his sister did narcotics by the pool with Daniel. Daniel moved in with them for the entire month that the parents were away. The two behaved so outrageously that even her 15-year-old brother thought it was too much. When Manfred and Marisia got home, Andreas told them everything. The family fought through the night. Suzanne's parents wanted her to dump Daniel and rid herself of this bad influence. She was flunking classes and doing drugs, something she had never dreamt of before. Suzanne, on the other hand, had a suggestion that her dad buy her an apartment so she and Daniel could live happily ever after there. Manfred realized the situation was more dire than he imagined. His daughter was, in short, an entitled brat. So he told her she was free to do whatever she liked, including run away into the sunset with Daniel, as long as she covered the costs. He was not going to financially support this, nor was he going to give her an allowance anymore if she continued to hang out with Daniel. Many kids grow up without an allowance, and most kids grow up without $10 million waiting for them in a Swiss bank account. But Suzanne did not realize this. Instead, she started hating her parents and wishing them dead. One day, she hatched a plan, and her boyfriend was happy to oblige. On November 1st, 2002, the Richthofens' neighbors heard screams from their house. It was Suzanne and Daniel. They had just returned home from a party where they discovered Manfred and Marisia butchered beyond recognition. The emergency services were quickly called to the location, but the parents' lives could not be saved. The scene was so graphic, it had the officers retching. It also had officers wondering what exactly happened. There were lots of conflicting clues. On the one hand, this was a millionaire family, so a home invasion was pretty likely. But the house had not been ransacked, just robbed of a few very precise valuables. This meant the robber knew exactly where to look. Other rooms were trashed, but no valuables were missing. Papers were thrown on the ground tidily, almost as if someone was trying to create a parody of a robbery. Then, the detectives learned that the family's alarm never went off or notified the guards stationed across the street. So whoever had entered the house had disarmed the alarm. Needless to say, this made the detectives weary of the Richthofens' immediate family, Suzanne and Andreas. Andreas was so shocked by what had happened that he went through several panic attacks throughout his first day. Heartbreakingly, he never fully recovered. He never had a successful career, and his mental health took a turn for the worse. In 2017, he broke into someone's home looking disheveled and claiming he did not want to live anymore. After this incident, he was admitted to a mental hospital, and it's unclear if he has ever been released. Suzanne, on the other hand, was much calmer, even hours after discovering her parents in the way that they were. When the detective spoke to Andreas, he told them what he and Suzanne had been doing the night before. Suzanne had snuck Andreas out of the house at around 9 p.m. the previous day. They went to a local party, and Suzanne ran off to a motel with Daniel for a few hours. Then at 4 a.m., the siblings returned home only to find their parents gone. This was odd. Why would Suzanne want Andreas out of the house on the same night her parents were unalived? And Suzanne's behavior only got more questionable following this. Manfred and Marisia were laid to rest around Suzanne's 19th birthday. But while most people were dressed soberly and crying, Suzanne showed up in a sexy outfit. She wanted the attention on her, not her parents. And 3 days after her parents were slain, Suzanne hosted a pool party. You guys, this is so typical for teenage killers. They really don't think ahead. Did Suzanne not realize that hosting a party would show her lack of empathy for her parents' passing? Then came an anonymous tip. A friend of the family phoned law enforcement with a strange piece of information. A young man named Daniel Cravinhos had just bought an expensive Suzuki motorcycle up front with $100 bills. This was Daniel's brother, the mechanic, who complained to everyone about how poor he was. How did he have this kind of money? And why did this happen just days after the Von Richthofen's deaths? The bike was confiscated by authorities and Christian was interrogated. Within the hour, he cracked. Christian confessed to taking the Von Richthofen's lives at Daniel and Suzanne's orders. Daniel and Suzanne's plan sounded enticing enough. Unalive Suzanne's parents and live off the 17 million euros they would inherit. Funny they never thought they would get arrested for such an obvious scheme. Suzanne and Daniel were in jail just days after the incident. Suzanne confessed, but refused to admit that money was a motive. She acted as though it was the real love between her and Daniel, hindered by a misunderstanding family. When Daniel confessed, he said of course it was money. He was going to live off Suzanne's parents' riches. This just goes to show the strength of their bond. This was not real love. It was a weak teenage romance with different goals and different worldviews. As soon as they were in handcuffs, Suzanne and Daniel broke it off. The case quickly made headlines all over Brazil, and people were outraged to hear how little empathy Suzanne still showed. What's worse, she was released on bail and allowed to walk free for 4 long years while she awaited her trial. During this time, Suzanne took the opportunity to give countless interviews in which she blamed Daniel and painted herself as a victim of his manipulation, an innocent bystander who had no choice but to do what Daniel said. It was all fake, just like Suzanne's love for her family. A few months into her tearjerker interviews, a cameraman filmed Suzanne's lawyer, instructing her to cry and say she felt guilt and remorse.
Sobre o que falar do ex-namorado Daniel Cravinhos e como se comportar diante da câmera.
By the time her trial began in July 2006, her lies had been exposed to the whole country. She still had no remorse for unaliving her parents. She only mourned her failed attempt to get her hands on her parents' money. During the trial, it was revealed that on the night of November 1st, Suzanne and Daniel did not sneak out to a motel. Instead, they left Andreas at the party and hurried back to Suzanne's home along with Christian. There, Suzanne checked on her parents to see if they were asleep. She gave the all clear and disabled the home alarm. Suzanne sat on the family couch downstairs while Daniel and Christian put on gloves and went upstairs armed with crowbars and hammers. When the couple refused to give in without a fight, the two brothers vacated them with towels and trash bags. Then they attempted to stage a robbery, quite dumbly so, and Daniel and Suzanne went to a hotel. Yeah, they did you-know-what minutes after offing Manfred and Mauricia. These three were nothing short of evil, and Suzanne's entitlement is truly repulsive. She never apologized for what she did. Until the very end of her sentencing, she insisted it was all Daniel's plan and that the two brothers were lying about her. On July 22nd, the three were found guilty of murder. Suzanne and Daniel were sentenced to 40 years in prison. Christian received 38 years behind bars. Suzanne never accepted her fate. She continued to appeal her sentence, citing personality disorders that led her to commit the heinous act, as if she did not know what she was doing. Thankfully, all of her appeals were rejected. Until she can show an ounce of remorse or admit to what she did, no judge will ever take her seriously. Distressingly enough, Suzanne will be released around her 60th birthday, and there's a fair chance she might still inherit her parents' money, thanks to Brazilian laws. If that happens, is 4 decades behind bars a good enough punishment for her? 18-year-old Obdulia Sanchez filmed herself in her car with her sister, 14-year-old Jacqueline Sanchez. All fine and dandy, right? Nope, that day Obdulia crashed the car and took her sister's life. But she did not stop filming. Jacqueline was preparing for her 15th birthday while in the car with her sister. Obdulia, however, was live streaming. She needed to grow her follower base, she said, and she could multitask, except she couldn't. No one can, really. There's a reason for all the warnings not to text and drive. The human brain can't distribute focus to 2 simultaneous tasks. It can only switch from one to the other very fast. But when driving, this can prove deadly. It all happened in a matter of seconds. 1 minute, Obdulia was making grimaces at the camera. The next, she yelled in horror, and the video ended with a loud bang. She remained at the scene in utter shock until authorities arrived at the scene and placed her under arrest. When they tested her alcohol level, they discovered the sad truth. Obdulia was driving under the influence. That's even worse than simply thinking you can multitask. Obdulia seemed oblivious to the fact that she had another life on board. Her little sister was in her care that day, and yet she drank, drove, and live streamed. And here's the worst part. Obdulia carried on with her live stream even after seeing her sister destroyed.
I love my sister to death. I don't give a This is the last thing I wanted to happen to us, but it just did.
Her first reaction wasn't crying for her sister. It was explaining to her followers that she did not want to off her sister. Even seconds after it happened, her primary concern was covering for herself.
Jacqueline, please wake up. I killed my sister, okay? I know I'm going to jail for life, alright? I understand that.
Again, her problem was that she was going to jail, not that Jacqueline was gone.
This is the last thing I wanted to happen, okay? I love you. Rest in peace, sweetie.
Throughout the entirety of her disgusting live stream, Obdulia keeps saying that this wasn't planned and makes sure that the internet doesn't perceive her as evil. But Obdulia did not realize that everyone who saw the live stream thought the stream itself made her evil. Who ever live streams their sibling's death? When she was arrested, Obdulia was asked why she did the live stream. Her answer was defensive. Everybody does it. Why not? People take videos of themselves in cars like all the time, and I'm only 18. We're still young. Why not? Your sister's death should provide an answer to that. Just saying. Obdulia still didn't seem to show any remorse for her actions. She was taken to jail in Fresno and put on a $300,000 bail. When she spoke to the media again, she spoke about her public image again. I didn't even know I looked like a monster. Like, I look like a freaking horrible monster. That was not my intention at all. Again, this was all about herself. She was concerned with how she looked to the internet, not with what she had done. She was charged with drunk driving and vehicular manslaughter, but even that wasn't enough to make her apologize and do her time in peace. From prison, she made a public statement saying she live-streamed Jacqueline's death so she could get a proper burial. In short, she did it to raise some funds for her family. I made that video because I knew I had more than 5,000 followers. It was the only way my sister would get a decent burial. I would never expose my sister like that. Suddenly, she cared for her family and did the unthinkable for their sake. Then why didn't she say this when the detectives questioned her about it? No, this was a hero story designed to make her look good. She was too entitled to accept her fault and release an apology. Just like Suzanne, she never apologized for unaliving her sister. She only apologized for making the video, offering a fake motive. Sorry for making that video. I look awful, but I accomplished my goal. I anticipated the public donating money because my family isn't rich. You guys, I'm pretty sure the public would have donated more if she had apologized and asked kindly for burial money. Obdulia pleaded not guilty. She was found guilty of DUI and manslaughter, nevertheless, and sentenced to 6 years and 4 months. Sounds like a short sentence for someone with so little remorse and so much annoying entitlement. Let's just hope she learns her lesson by the time she's released. On November 8th, 2010, a 24-year-old woman named Jennifer Pan woke up with a firearm to her head. A masked man dragged her out of her bedroom and tied her to the upstairs banister. She helplessly watched as her parents were dragged to the living room downstairs by 2 more hitmen, put against a wall, and threatened with death. Jennifer told the man who tied her to get the $2,500 she earned from her piano lessons from her room. Another hitman found $1,100 hidden in Jennifer Mom's Bish's nightstand. Then the couple was ordered to stand up, and one man threw a blanket over their heads. 5 bangs were heard, and both parents fell to the floor. Bish's last words were, "Please let my daughter live." Moments later, Jennifer made a fateful 911 call.
What's your name?
My name is Jennifer.
So it just broke in?
Someone broke in and I heard like pops. I don't know what's happening. I'm tied upstairs.
Does it sound like gun?
I don't know what I could sound like. I just heard a pop.
While the dispatcher was sending authorities Jennifer's way, she heard something terrible. It was a scream, but not a scream that sounded like someone was in physical pain. It was like someone was going through unspeakable emotional distress. Within inches of death, Jennifer's father, Han, had crawled into the driveway, screaming after seeing his wife die. He was shot in the head and fell into a coma shortly after he was rescued by paramedics. Amazingly, he would pull through and even help close the case. Initially, Jennifer was treated as a victim too, but there was something odd about her 911 call, something the dispatcher couldn't shake off, and something she had discussed with the officers later on. If Jennifer was tied to the banister, how on earth did she make the 911 call? And why would 3 hitmen leave a witness after what they'd done? And if they came to rob the house, why did they get away with $3,000 but not the 2 luxury cars in the driveway? As you might imagine, these were all questions the detectives had for Jennifer.
I want to see how you could physically get your phone out of your waistband. We're obviously going to need to know that. It's very important.
Jennifer told a series of implausible, conflicting stories where she managed to use her nose, tongue, or even untie one of her hands. Innocent people don't tend to change their stories. Plus, her behavior over the following week was distressingly calm. Her mother had been unalived in front of her, and her father was in a coma. Jennifer, the detectives thought, should be more affected. Unfortunately for Jennifer, her father woke up from a coma, and he had a blood-chilling story to tell the detectives. Jennifer's parents, Bish Ha and Hui Han Pan, had come to Canada from the Chinese diaspora in Vietnam. They had worked hard to escape their impoverished and persecuted life back home, and they always told their children they should do the same. They wanted Jennifer and her younger brother Felix to get an education and a prestigious, high-paying job. Felix became a mechanical engineering undergrad at a top university in Canada. He was going to design cars. Jennifer, on the other hand, did not seem to follow in her parents' footsteps as eagerly. However, her parents did not know this until much too late. Growing up, Jennifer was just as academically gifted and hardworking as her brother. She learned piano and became an Olympic-caliber figure skater during high school. Then she decided on her career too.
His daughter, he wanted to be a doctor, eventually changing that to a pharmacist because he said that she didn't have the stomach for it.
However, as she grew older, Jennifer found it increasingly hard to stay on top of her schoolwork, and she was too afraid of her strict, demanding parents to let them know.
She's been given all the opportunities to succeed, but academically she's challenged. She can't actually meet those expectations. And as a result of that, and the fear of failing in a parent's eyes, she then begins to spin a web of deceit and lies.
The more she dated and hung out with friends, the more Jennifer seemed to fail classes. That's when her lies got bigger.
She started to forge her report cards and give herself so she looks like she had straight A's. And then once she was on that journey, that train, there was no getting off.
Jennifer never enrolled to university, but her parents thought she did.
She claimed to have a place at university. The university declined to take her because she didn't match their entrance requirements.
By the time she was 20, Jennifer had her parents convinced that she was a pharmacology student at the University of Toronto. She had even bought pharmacy books and left pharmacy videos open on her computer, knowing her parents would check the screen when passing by. It did not stop there. A few years later, she claimed she graduated from that university, then lied to her family about getting the prestigious internship at the Children's Hospital. Jennifer became a role model for Felix and a subject for bragging at dinner parties for her parents. They would tell all their friends how proud of their daughter they were. They raised her to be ambitious, and look at her go. They had no idea that, in fact, Jennifer was working as a waitress and giving piano lessons to children. Side note, of course there is no shame in waitressing or teaching music, and it should not be seen as inferior to being a pharmacology student, but in Jennifer's universe, it was. Her family believed that a prestigious career was the only way to go for their children, and Jennifer was deeply caught up in pleasing them, more than living a genuine life.
So the only way that she understands, evaluates herself and her life, her whole existence, is against the measure of achievement that her parents present for her.
Without realizing it, Jennifer had become extremely stressed by her double life. She'd been doing it for a decade, and she knew no other reality. The truth has a tendency to seep out, even when you work really hard to keep it hidden. When it eventually did, Jennifer's world crumbled. Jennifer's parents had grown increasingly suspicious that they'd never seen their daughter's hospital ID badge or uniform. Whenever they asked her about it, she would change the subject. So one day, her mom Bish followed her to work, only to see Jennifer chilling in a cafe for several hours. That's when she called the University of Toronto and learned her daughter had never been accepted to it. The same day, she phoned her high school, only to find out she never graduated. This led to a night-long fight where more truths came out.
Basically, all hell broke loose at family home. Her father apparently wanted to throw her out and was disgraced and everything else.
Although Jennifer was in her early 20s, her relationship with her parents was that of a teen. She was lying about her life and lying in order to have a social life. You see, Jennifer's parents were, in all respects, quite overprotective of their daughter. They wanted Jennifer at home with them, seeing no boyfriends. But Jennifer was seeing someone, a man named Daniel Wong. Yep, another boyfriend named Daniel, and just like in Suzanne's case, he really wasn't good news. It was clear that Jennifer loved Daniel from the way she spoke about him to her parents, but when they heard he was a pot dealer, they decided she could no longer date him. Now, considering Jennifer was 24 and her parents were forbidding her to date someone, it's easy to see why she chose to keep him a secret in the first place. It's usually highly critical and demanding parents that lead a child to lie. Children don't start lying for no reason. However, this case took a turn for the worse in a big way. And at this point, we cannot blame Jennifer's parents for more than doing what they believed was right for their daughter. Jennifer's family offered her two options: be disowned or do as they say and hold on to her family and inheritance. In order to choose the second option, Jennifer had to dump Daniel, focus on her studies, graduate from high school, and enroll in pharmacology college. Until then, she was grounded, like a young teen. She had a curfew and her parents were watching her every move. If she wanted to leave the house, she had to justify her exit and get her parents okay. Jennifer wanted to sneak out and meet Daniel, but it was very hard, and most of the time she ended up staying at home. A few months later, Daniel had some bad news for Jennifer. He had fallen in love with someone else. He wanted to break up with Jennifer. Needless to say, Jennifer was devastated, and she blamed her parents for it. If they would have allowed her to see Daniel, the relationship would have gone on, and he wouldn't have had the time to meet someone new.
This really sent Jennifer into a bit of a depression over the kind of pressure she was getting from her parents and the kind of constraints she had on her life.
Much like Suzanne, Jennifer wanted to have her cake and eat it too. And as she was used to spinning a full web of lies, Jennifer quickly devised another, much more dreadful scheme. First, she wrote to Daniel to let him know that his new girlfriend had sent a group of men to her home to essay her. Of course, this was a lie. Then she contacted Daniel again with an evil request. You see, when Hui Han woke up from the coma and spoke to the detectives, he did not know the full extent of what his daughter had done. But he had a hunch that she hated them for taking away her freedom and exposing her lies. And he suspected her of orchestrating their murders. Well, her mother's slaying and her father's attempted murder. Hui Han did not know how Jennifer would do this. He was hoping it wasn't true, but he had to tell his theory to the detectives. It wasn't long before they confirmed his hunches. Jennifer was arrested on suspicion of murder and her phone was seized. She hadn't even tried deleting phone calls or messages. It was all there for the detectives. Jennifer had asked Daniel to put her in contact with 3 hitmen. It's shocking that Daniel would know such people in the first place, or that he would help Jennifer, knowing what she was about to do. But Daniel shared his contacts with Jennifer and she began her plan. She promised the hitmen that after unaliving her parents, she would inherit $1 million and she would pay each of them $10,000 for the deed. They were taking 2 innocent lives for nothing more than a promise. Also, how did they think Jennifer would inherit the money before getting arrested? Did they really think her plan was that flawless? Neither of these people realized that by tying Jennifer to the banister to make it look like she was a victim, she wouldn't be able to call 911. It was a fake tie, of course, and the dispatcher saw right through this. When the detectives confronted her about it, she did not even have a straight story to tell. And when Daniel was arrested too, he confessed to everything. Daniel and 2 of the 3 hitmen were charged and put behind bars. Jennifer Pan was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years. She was also given a court order banning her from any communication with her family for life. The court order was requested by her father and brother. Imagine having to live the rest of your life knowing your daughter unalived your wife and tried to take your life too. For Felix, recovering from this is just as hard. His sister used to be his role model. Now she is exposed as a horrible liar and evil person. It's reassuring to think that people like Suzanne, Obdulia, and Jennifer are in prison now. But how many more teens are meticulously planning to unalive their families right now? Can the red flags be seen and intercepted early on, or is it impossible to tell when you have a little monster under your roof? Hey, thanks for watching. What are your thoughts on these stories? Do you know similar cases? Let me know in a comment. And before you leave, make sure you give this video a like and subscribe for more. See you next time.